No problem.
All right, so we're joined from Montclair, New Jersey, right outside New York City, by my friend, our regular guest, Kendra Dancy, founder of the Black Report, graduate of Hampton University, featured on HBCU Lifestyle Magazine as one of the top 5 accountants, Black accountants in America that you need to know. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson. We're recording this for our friends at Madison Central, Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Options Center, our YouTube channel, and we're in the finance career cluster. So thank you, as always, for taking some time for us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so before we get into all of your nitty gritty of your job in finance, take us back to your college background, because you went to Hampton University, great HBCU there in Virginia near Washington, D.C. So take us through your experience there and how that led to getting your background in finance.
For sure. So I decided to go to Hampton for the 5-year MBA program, which basically allowed me to get both a bachelor's and a master's in business administration in 5 years. For me, it was kind of like a little bit of a financial decision. I'm like, okay, I think I want to get my master's. I can do it in an accelerated period of time. I always knew I wanted to go to an HBCU. Both of my parents graduated from Bowie State. And so they're both products of HBCU. So I knew I wanted to go to an HBCU, and I went on a college tour. It was an HBCU college tour when I was like in 11th grade. And they took us to a bunch of different schools. I went to FAMU in Florida, Spelman, Clark, etc. And I ultimately fell in love with Hampton because the campus is not only beautiful, but I knew that one day I wanted to open my own business. And like I said, the business program really attracted me. So I really enjoyed my time in Hampton. I definitely feel like it prepared me for life after college. They spent a lot of time like focusing on, especially if you decide to go into business, this is not an industry with a lot of people who look like us. And so when you're at an HBCU, obviously you feel like you're in this bubble because you're surrounded by other people who look like you. All of us want to be successful. And unfortunately, that's not really what the real world looks like. But I do feel like I was prepared being at Hampton because they spent a lot of time like really focusing on, our executive presence and how we talk in rooms and, making yourself known and being confident in your answers. And, we had this one class called the Leadership Application Program where different companies would come speak to us once a week, and we had to dress up in a business suit, only be black or navy blue. It was like very strict. Couldn't wear a brown suit. They had a very strict dress code, and that was all preparing us for like life after college and making sure you make the good first impression. But yeah, I enjoyed my time in Hampton. I would recommend anybody who's interested in business to consider that program. They have like a 97 or 98% placement rate. People who graduate from the program have full-time jobs. A lot of colleges can't say that, but like I said, they also really like, not only were they giving us exposure to all these different companies, but we were also required to have 2 internships for college credit during our time in the program. And so obviously if you do well on your internship, that leads to a full-time job. And that's what I did. So I interned at Prudential, and that's ultimately what brought me to the New Jersey area after college.
That's awesome. And Hampton also, the campus is right on the water. It's an unbelievable
Yep.
campus.
It's
Um,
beautiful.
Now, that was a great segue. That's what I wanted to talk about next. Before you became an entrepreneur, you worked in the finance industry at Prudential, and I know when you opened your business, you were still working your full time job just
Yeah.
to ease your way into full time entrepreneurship. So, what drew you toward the financial industry? Because, like you said, there's not a lot of women CPAs. There's not a lot of Black CPAs. So,
Yep.
what drew you specifically to that field?
Um, so for me, when I was in college, one of the classes, so I'm actually a very practical person. And like I actually really enjoyed my accounting classes because one thing I actually like about accounting is you always know when you're right. So there's no real gray area, like there is on like, your biochem or chemistry or, those other types of subjects. For me, accounting just made sense because I'm like, okay, there's only one right answer. Your debits and credits have to balance. And for me, I'm like, okay, this is that's the way my brain works. I need to know that I'm right. I'm going to get frustrated if I'm not sure if it's right. So that was one of the classes that I really enjoyed. And also growing up, I had a very like entrepreneurial spirit. I always knew that I wanted to have my own business. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so when I started at Hampton, we had like to take a lot of different accounting classes because what you'll learn is that accounting is the foundation of business. It's the language of business. You need to understand your numbers in order to run a business. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I'm not exactly sure what type of business I want to start, but accounting just seems like something I need to know, right? Regardless of what I decide to do. And so that's ultimately what led me down the accounting path. And then obviously I got involved with NABA, which is the National Association of Black Accountants, when I was in college. I got several scholarships from them. And they ultimately, I did get a scholarship to pay for like the CPA study materials. Um, so it was kind of like a natural progression for me. Like I enjoyed the course. It made sense. And then I just kind of like naturally fell into it. And then for me, I always like a challenge. And so the fact that, this is an industry that is very like underrepresented by people like us, to me kind of like felt like, okay, this is what I should be doing. And then not only that, because I know that Black people are, starting businesses and creating businesses at a much higher rate than everybody else, and then knowing that accounting is a language of business, I'm like, well, I need to find a way to merge those two things, right? Because you can't run a successful business without understanding accounting. And
Absolutely.
and so that's kind of what led me to where I am.
Absolutely. And we're going to get to that in a second. But one thing I wanted to hit on is that even if somebody doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, because it's not for everybody, you got to have the mindset. But like you said, you were at Prudential, your husband was at Goldman Sachs. These big companies are always getting, no matter, even if it's McDonald's, if it's Hampton Inn, if it's Delta Airlines, every company has finance people. Finance jobs are not going away, and they're probably more in demand now than ever before. Not only because of the high amount of online business, but because these people have to also be skilled in cybersecurity and identity theft with the ever growing since COVID, all this e-commerce that goes on. So talk about some of the trends that you're seeing. So, even if somebody, I don't want to own my own business, I want to be an employee. That's fine. And you can make a good living for yourself. And I know you and your husband started out as financial employees, and y'all
Right.
made really good money at seeing how the financial industry works.
So, sorry, what's the question?
No, just if somebody doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, but these financial jobs are not going away. Every single company, whether it's we talked about even at the school system, we have finance people in our school district here in Mississippi. So they really are, finance jobs are everywhere.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, people need people to be the finance people, and those people don't get laid off.
Right. So actually, that's a good point. That's one thing I forgot to mention about why I also landed in accounting. I also learned when I got to Hampton that when companies are doing layoffs, the accounting is the people who are there to the end. I
Yep.
actually experienced that in my company before I started full-time entrepreneurship, which was a cryptocurrency startup that was on a slowly downward trend. And I actually saw, like, as the company started laying off people, they were laying off developers because we didn't really need to build out the product anymore if we weren't making any money. Marketing, recruiters, we don't need to hire anybody. But at the end of the day, people still need to get paid. Your bills still need to get paid. There's still things like operationally within the finance and accounting department that still have to happen until the business is completely dissolved. And so for me, I'm like, oh, that sense of security also, like, felt really good. Like, no matter what I decided to do, if I decided that I didn't like this company, I knew I could always find another job because accountants are always needed. Same thing with my transition to entrepreneurship. At the end of the day, if one day I decide, you know what, I just want to go work for somebody again, I can always pick that back up and do it because the skill sets that I'm building right now are still relevant and applicable. And there is always someone who's going to need an accountant. So from that end, I would say that anyone who, if you like business and you like to understand like what's going on in a business, I feel like accounting and finance is a good place to be, because that's how you really understand like how the business is doing. From my perspective, when I went to work at that startup, it was no surprise to me that they were on a downward trend because I could see that from where I sat. So while other people in the company might have been caught off guard, I saw the writings on the wall, and that's why I started getting my own thing together on the side. So it's definitely a very, I would say, fulfilling career path. It's challenging. There's always something to learn, but it's also very valued. You're going to be really respected within the company because there are some people who they don't understand it at all. They know it's important and they know that whatever information you do have is valuable. They don't understand it. They don't want to understand it, and so it's good to be in a place where people like need you and they need your information and they need your expertise. So
Yeah, and I saw a meme a few weeks ago that I thought was funny. It said CEOs complain about not having $30 million in profit, but if Sally in accounting quits, the whole business falls apart.
yep.
So, and I thought that was great because that really is the backbone of everything. Now,
Yeah.
before we get into your company, I do want to ask about the different entry points in finance because here in the community colleges in Mississippi, they do a great job of the career technical programs. There's accounting information systems. There's accounting technology, and these are all 1 to 2 year programs. So
Yep.
maybe if somebody doesn't want to take on the debt or take on the commitment of a 4 year degree, and some do, some don't. What type of entry spots are there in finance if you
Yeah.
just want to do the 1 or 2 year program?
Yeah, so I think the one that you mentioned is a good one, accounting information system. I think there's, especially if there's someone who has like an interest in systems and technology and computers in general. The accounting industry has been going through a bit of a shift, especially like from a technology perspective. So a lot of the old school accountants are having to like get on the same page with people who are a lot newer to the industry because there's so much like out there in terms of software in general. And so accounting information system is a really good field because as technology continues to evolve, most of those systems are focused on like automating the tasks that are routine. There's a lot of things in accounting that happen every day. And so taking those things off of the plates of people like myself so that we could focus on the more strategic efforts is, definitely a need in the industry. I would say also someone who um, can come in through a bookkeeper. So I have bookkeepers on my team, one of which does not have any accounting experience. It's something that you can learn if you have a desire. Um, and bookkeeping is something that every company also needs as well. And so, like being a bookkeeper or an accounts payable specialist or things of that nature, you don't necessarily need a 4 year degree for. You just kind of need someone who will take a chance on you and is willing to train you and teach you the different systems and things of that nature. So I would say those are 2 to 3 different avenues.
Yeah, and also finance is different than other fields because it works so closely with IT and software people. We have another guest that speaks with us sometimes that is an IT person. His degree is in computer science. He hires IT people, but he handles the server for the Mississippi Department of Revenue. He's not a finance person, but he said, "Look, we're managing a $7 billion budget. That server cannot go down." So
Right.
the finance and tech people work hand in hand, and that's another great entry point to work in a financial field because they will pay top dollar for somebody that can handle a financial software system.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say from my experience too, sitting on both ends, like being able to, as an IT person, to be able to speak the same language as a finance person and like, you're understanding like, their pain points and stuff is like really valuable. Just because when you're like creating a solution for end users to be able to understand like, okay, what are they ultimately looking for is like really important. So I think that that's kind of what the accounting information systems gives you because you're still going to be learning like the foundational accounting aspects, but from a technical IT perspective. So
Yeah. And like I said, we have those programs here at the community colleges of Mississippi, and I think that is a field these kids, if you don't want to do the 4 year degree, is a great field to get into. Now, before we get to the questions, we got to talk about the Black Report, theblattreport.com, which has become even more successful in the last few years. I mean, we had some entrepreneurs last week, and we talked about some of these, especially these Black-owned businesses, maybe don't have that financial background. They look great on Instagram. They even have a great product. They have a great customer service, a great sales pitch, but they're not making any money. because
Yeah.
they haven't learned that accounting side of it. And like you said, that is the backbone of a business. And that's
Yeah.
a need that you saw and that you've tapped into and become very successful with. So talk about, what it is you do and why it's so important, especially for these kids that maybe want to be a Black owned business one day.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, when I first started my business, honestly, I definitely knew that, there was like a gap in like our community. While we were starting businesses at a faster rate, similar to how there's a gap in the net worth of Black and white individuals, there was also a gap in like, profitability of those Black owned businesses. And so, one of the things that's really important to me is making sure that like my clients understand what's going on with their business. Sometimes it's, these are hard conversations. Like you can have a great business and a great idea, but if you're not making money, that business is not going to sustain itself. A lot of businesses, they fail because they have cash flow management problems. So I spend a lot of time talking to my clients about, okay, this is what happened last month. This is how much you spent, this is how much you made. Let's take a look at the last 3 to 6 months. What's working and what's not? And I think it's really important. Like, you're not going to be able to make those decisions if you're not paying attention to like the truth. The one thing that I always say is like, men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. Like numbers, they don't lie. So, you can try to paint a rosy picture, but at the end of the day, like the proof is in the numbers. And so I want you to be successful. Like I'm literally like the biggest cheerleader. Like I want your business to thrive. And so sometimes these are really tough conversations, but it comes down to, okay, you're thinking about opening up a second location. Well, this first location is not profitable. So what are we going to do to get there?
Yeah.
Um, your payroll is way too high. Like, how can we manage this business with less? Like, what can we do? What roles can we consolidate? Like, those are tough conversations, right? Because you're impacting people's lives. But at the end of the day, everybody knows we're in an inflationary time right now. Everything is expensive. People aren't spending as much money on things that are considered not needs. And even at the grocery store, everything is expensive, and so people are holding on to their money tight. And so you also have to do the same thing in your business, right? You have to think about, okay, what do I need and what can I delay spending on, because I need to make sure that I have enough cash for those slower periods when people are not spending money. And so those are the conversations that I have with my clients all the time. It's really important. They're not easy conversations, but ultimately, if you want to run a successful business, you can't shy away from those conversations, and you can't just ignore your numbers, because if you do, you're running your business blind. So
Absolutely. Because whether you're busy or not, your fixed costs are going to stay the same. I'm not
exactly.
even a finance expert, and I know that. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
everybody wants to do the fun, glamorous stuff, but at the end of the day, you're there to make money. And that's great. And you've really tapped into a great market, and it really is a need. And I encourage anybody, if you want to start you want to start a business, reach out to people like yourself, because you don't have to be a financial expert. You can hire somebody to do it for you, and they're not a
Yeah.
full-time employee. So I think that's foolish for somebody to try to run their books on their own. When they don't have any experience in it. So it's just like anything else. And there's great, I know you do a great job, you run your business virtually. So if anybody's interested, they could reach out to you and you could really get them started on a good financial set. But I do have some questions from the students. I'll get to as many of these as I can. These are all ninth graders.
Okay.
I like this first one. And I guess since you saw the video with you and your husband that we showed for Market Watch, this is Michaela Dawson, one of our cheerleaders here. And she asked, how do you balance your personal life with your career?
It's a good question. Honestly, it's something I'm still working on. I think that I've gotten better at it now that I have like transitioned away from the traditional corporate 9 to 5, because I have a little bit more control over my time. One of the things that I've said, like when I started this business, I'm not taking any meetings on Fridays. That's really important to me. So Fridays are days where, if my husband gets off early, we'll try to go on a date night. Walking my dog during lunchtime, and like blocking my calendar during my lunchtime so that, we can get that time together. But I would say that work-life balance is really up to you. It wasn't something that I was good at when I had a traditional corporate 9 to 5 because I was always so afraid that like, oh, if I left at 5 or, if I actually took an hour lunch break, people would think I wasn't working as hard. And that was very foolish of me because some people are really good at like setting those boundaries. So I would say that for anybody who's trying to find that balance between their personal life and their career, it's really about setting boundaries and being really clear on what's important to you. The work will still get done. But at the end of the day, like time is something you'll never get back. And if you die tomorrow, that company will post your job in a week. And so you always have to remember that when you're choosing your career over your family.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point because entrepreneurs, you do have the flexibility of setting your schedule, but you still
Yeah.
got to get the work done. So it's just a matter of managing that time and being proactive about it. This is Javion Fields. He's a football player here at Velma Jackson. And he asked, where do you see your business growing in the next 5 years?
So in the next 5 years, I hope to have a team, of at least like 4 to 5 professionals. I really would like to continue to employ people of color, whether they're aspiring accountants, et cetera, just to make sure that I'm helping to increase that pipeline of future CPAs and being that person that I didn't have when I was pursuing my CPA. So right now I have 2 contractors that work for me. One of them is a CPA candidate, and the other one is actually my brother-in-law who is taking a break from school right now. So I'm trying to encourage him to go back to school and hopefully pursue accounting. So it's really important to me. I definitely want to continue, just like I want to help Black-owned businesses. I also want to help the pipeline of future CPAs and make sure that we bring more Black CPAs into the field. So,
Absolutely. And we have a great accounting program at Jackson State, one of our HBCUs here in Mississippi that we've had some take advantage of. And they actually offer summer accounting camps for high school students that are interested in accounting. So really, really cool. Now, this is a great question. This is Micaiah Luckett. Almost said her name wrong again. One of our basketball players here. And she asked, if I wanted to start my own business, how should I prioritize finances to set up financial success?
that's a great question. And the fact that you're asking that question tells me that you're already on the right path. So I would say one thing that I did when I was first starting is not knowing that how much everything was going to cost, but whatever extra money I did have, I just stacked away. You want to make sure you don't start your business in debt if you don't have to. So if you do have a job while you're trying to start your entrepreneur journey, I would start saving like some money on the side that you can use to fund whatever you need to get your business started, whether that's a website, you might have to pay for some Facebook ads, etc. But I would definitely say start saving money now while you can. I would definitely try to, apply for some grants. Free money is always good money. And then, just start coming up with a plan. And I would also say, like, set a budget for the first year. The first year of my business, I actually did not make any money. Thankfully, I was still working full time, so it wasn't something that I was counting on, but I was spending money at that time. So my business was operating at a loss, but thankfully, because I knew that this was coming and I still had a full time job, I was setting money aside. So I would definitely say set a budget for when you first get started. Try to stack away as much money as possible and do your very best to not start your business in debt. Sometimes it's easier said than done, but just try to make sure that you have a little bit of cash saved for whatever you do have to spend, knowing that you might not make any money for some time. It will take some time to start making money. So
Absolutely. And that is something I've found out as I've started doing this is that more and more entrepreneurs like yourself, they keep that full-time job at least or even a part-time job just to keep the cash flow coming in, to keep the benefits, to save where
yeah,
they're not operating at as much of a loss. So I think that's important. You don't have to jump all in immediately.
yeah.
Pace yourself and you can lower those costs. This is Jakeithia Brown, and she asked, what was the hardest part and biggest obstacle you faced of getting to where you are now?
For me, honestly, the hardest thing that I've ever done was take the CPA exam. I was really good in school. I got good grades. I was a good student. And then when I graduated and I was working full time at Prudential, I was balancing studying and trying to, establish myself in a new area, in a new career. I'm just starting a full time job. I honestly don't like, I cry a lot. I mean, I miss vacations at home with family, like during the holidays, because I had a test coming up. And then to find out I didn't even pass the test was really hard. I'm like, dang, I should have just went home and spent Christmas with my family if I wasn't even going to pass. It was a big sacrifice. All my friends were going to New York for happy hours after work. And I'm like, sorry, I can't go. I have to study. And so that was honestly one of the biggest challenges for me. But I, don't regret it at all. I definitely don't think I would be where I was if I quit, if I got discouraged. But yeah, that test was really hard. It was hard for me because I was someone who wasn't used to failing. It was definitely a reality check, and me getting comfortable with knowing that, okay, I'm gonna have to do things differently if I want different results. And so that was one of the biggest challenges for me.
And the CPA exam is 4 parts, correct?
Yes, it's 4 parts.
Yeah, and it changes all the
I had
time.
to take one part 3 times. I
Oh,
had to take another part 2 times. So anybody who's listening to this who is struggling through that test, I feel you, because it's not easy.
yeah, and then just learning the gap is a task in itself. I just got one more from the students. This is TJ Jones, one of our football players here, and he asked, "What are the pros and what are the cons of working in finance?"
Um, So I would say one of the pros, something I shared earlier, is that it's a very respected field. It's, valued, it's needed. There's definitely job security. One of the cons, I would say specifically with accounting, is things are always changing. So, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. But for me, it's like sometimes there's a lot to keep up with. I don't specialize in taxes, but for people who do, the tax laws are always changing. It's a lot to stay on top of. So I would say while it definitely keeps your mind fresh, it's definitely one of those things where, there's really there's no end to like the learning. You're always going to be learning. Um, and then I would say another con. I mean, some people might think it's kind of boring. I make it fun because, ultimately, like I said, I really do love business. And for me, accounting and understanding what's going on in the business is how I help business owners like be successful. So some people might think it's boring, and I would say it's always changing. And so depending on who you ask, that might be a con. If you're looking for something where you can kind of kick your feet up and chill, it's definitely not that. So
Well, and I agree. I mean, some people do think it's boring, but it's not going away. It's so
right.
necessary, and with technological advances, it's going to get even more necessary and more complicated. So I really encourage anyone, and I know you really don't do the banking side, but people want to have a family. Banks are always hiring. They need financial people, and they are off every holiday and off at 5 o'clock every day and off on the weekend. So that's another great area of finance to get into.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time, and as always, we thank you for joining. I learn something every time you're with us. You've just been such a blessing for us. It's not every day people in Camden, Mississippi, get to talk to somebody in the New York area, so that really is cool. But before we go, first of all, tell us where to find your website, and on Instagram, you're a great follow. So if anybody's interested, tell us where they can find you.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram at the THEBLK report. I'll be honest, I definitely fell off on posting on there. So if you click on there, you'll probably see I haven't posted in maybe over a year. But my website is www.theblackreport.com. And I'm also on Twitter, if it's still called Twitter. At the same thing, the Black Report. So yeah.
That's awesome. Now one thing, but before we go, that you and your husband talked about in that video for On Market Watch, and I'll send that to all the teachers that they can show. You guys really were big on making the Black community more financially literate. This
Yeah.
is a very hardworking community here. Great hearts, servants' hearts, blue collar. But the rural Black community, not just here, but all over America, has kind of been forgotten in financial literacy and in financial skills. So
Yeah.
even if somebody doesn't want to be a financial professional, which obviously everybody can't be, why is it so important for these kids now to pay attention to basic financial skills if they ever want to, first of all, not get screwed out of money buying a home, owning a business, paying their taxes. It is just so important. As boring as stupid as you may think it is, it's things you have to know.
Yeah. So shameless plug to my husband. He has plenty of free resources on his website. He's dancywithmoney.com. He has a ton of blogs where he talks about a host of different things. And he tries to make it, relatable, approachable, and easy to understand and digestible. But I would say that this is one thing that I kind of wish that, early like childhood education, high school, et cetera, and even in college, they spend a little bit more time explaining to people, the importance of like financial literacy. I think it should be a requirement that everybody take a personal finance class, because once you get out in the real world, if you decide to go to college or if you don't, people are going to be shoving credit card offers in your face. There's gonna be a ton of like things coming your way, and it's just really important to understand what you're signing up for. Pretty sure everybody has been in Victoria's Secret or Target and they've offered you a credit card and said, "Hey, would you like to save 10% today?" Something very, not a lie, but it sounds good. And so really just understanding like what you're signing up for, what it means to, make the minimum payment. How much is that going to cost you for this one thing that you decide you wanted to buy today that you did not have the money for? And you decide, okay, I'm just going to make the minimum payment of $10 for this $100 thing for the next 20, 30 years. How much is that one thing going to ultimately cost you? So honestly, I think it's really important for everybody to just really understand the basics of credit cards, having a savings account, having a checking account, understanding like where to go to look at your credit score and know what's on your credit score, because sometimes people get a hold of your social security number and sign you up for stuff and you have no idea. So it's really important. And there's a lot of free resources out there. And I would also steer clear of anyone who says they can fix your credit, because most of the time it's a scam. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
I love it. Well, as always, I learned so much from you, and we appreciate you fitting this in your schedule. And I know, I think you have a great vacation next week as well. But
Thank
Kendra
you.
Dancy, all the way from Montclair, New Jersey, right there outside New York City. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Greg. Have a good one.
I talk to you soon, buddy.